Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. My name is Nate. I also go by Hockey Boy Nate, and today we're going to be discussing the threat for a multi-day severe weather event and/or outbreak to be coming to these plains, from northern plains all the way down to the southern plains and even into the deep south. But before we get started, please be sure to leave a like, subscribe if you are new, hit that notification bell so that you are up to date with all my content, including videos just like this one, as well as severe weather live streams or any live streams that we do on weather events, like the days of the weather event. Hint, hint, might be streaming tonight. As well as share this video on social media. But with that being said, let's go ahead and get into the models here. Or not even get into the models. Let's get into the Storm Prediction Center and take a look at this. We have two areas of slight risks now. This was something that I was thinking could happen, but I didn't really want to say a whole lot on it, mainly because I didn't know how far north the moisture return was going to be, which if you don't know what the moisture return is, it's basically the Gulf of Mexico creates all this moisture. And so as a low pressure moves through and you have this kind of like cold front that forms just like this, like kind of with like this line, it kind of sweeps this way and brings a lot of moisture up with it. So some of the moisture actually gets up into parts of southeastern Minnesota, into northern parts of Iowa, and even western parts of Wisconsin. So that's something to keep in mind. But I told you all, I said today, Wednesday, March the 10th, that we would have severe weather this past Friday. And looky here. Today is Wednesday, and we still have that risk for severe storms. So hail is still there. 15% chance of hail in southeastern parts of Kansas into west central parts of Missouri, as well as for southeastern parts of Minnesota and western parts of Wisconsin into a little bit of northern parts of Iowa. Wind across the board is a giant 5%. So gusty winds in this case, the 5% is indicative of 58 mile per hour winds or greater. So that if it's above 58 mile per hour winds, that is above the severe threshold and could give you a severe thunderstorm warning. I didn't mention this for hail, but 15% chance of you getting 1-inch sized hail or greater. So if you're in that 15% chance, that's your that's what you could get. And then last but not least, this is something that we were kind of expecting for the south, but not really for the north, unless if it had that moisture. But if we go over to tornado, the tornadic chance right here, there's 0 near Kansas and Oklahoma, which means that you're most likely going to get a bunch of hailers. But up north, look at this, 5% and 2%. The 5% is indicative of you getting just a chance, the probability of a tornado within 25 miles of a point. So if I put a point right here, 25-mile radius around, you have a 5% chance of tornado. So anyone in this brown circle, whether it's western Wisconsin, southeastern Minnesota, northern Iowa, you have a 5% chance for tornadoes. I do want to talk about a couple other things before we go into the models here. Thursday, we have that the bridge event from the low pressure that is moving on through here today. So the low pressure moves on through and a new low pressure comes in behind it. So it kind of just forms a little stationary boundary, and they kind of connect the two lows. So that's the reason why there is a marginal for tomorrow for wind and hail into central Oklahoma and little parts of Texas into southwestern Missouri and northwestern Arkansas. But day 3, this is something that the Storm Prediction Center, or actually, I should say everyone's been watching at this point. And ever since they issued the 3 slight risks 2 days ago for Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. I guess all of our eyes has been really trying to pay attention to this, and here in day 3, the day 3 outlook, it seems as if they have continued to be pretty adamant that there is going to be some sort of severe weather that could be impacting the northern panhandle of Texas into the west central parts of Oklahoma. So that's something to keep in mind with that. Day 4, this is Saturday. Look at this risk, chat, guys. I almost said chat, but I'm not live streaming. This risk extends from southern Kansas all the way down into Oklahoma and down into Texas, like the Dallas-Fort Worth regions, all the way down further south into the heart of central Texas. So that's something to keep in mind too, that this event could be pretty widespread for gusty winds, large hail, and maybe even a few tornadoes. And then day 5, this is where the event shifts more towards the eastern plains into more of a Dixie Alley threat. So southeastern Kansas into eastern Oklahoma, the Texarkana region, which is actually kind of in the dead center of it, much of Arkansas, northern Louisiana into northwestern Louisiana, and eastern Texas could get some action, such as gusty winds, large hail, and as I said, maybe even a threat for tornadoes. Let's go into the models here. We'll talk about this event coming up here today first, and we'll get into the timing here. We're going to use the HRRR model because the HRRR model is an hourly model, so it updates every hour. It also has frames for every hour, so this gives us a nice idea as to when the thunderstorms can be initiating and where it will be at what specific time. So we'll take a look. This is the morning here as it continues to move on through. You can see this low pressure develop into, well, not really develop, move into the general regions of the Midwest. You can see the snow and the freezing precipitation up to the north into South Dakota. That's what we were talking about a couple videos ago. And then all of a sudden into the afternoon hours, you can see, look at this. There's a little cell that pops up right in the area that we're looking at, and more cells pop up, and it eventually turns into a line of storms by 0Z, so 6 o'clock Central Standard Time. That's where it starts to kind of form a line here, and the storms further off to the north very well could be a bit more tornadic than the ones to the south, mainly because you would have a lot more energy since you're near a low pressure system. And if you think of it this way, all right, if you think about it this way as to why there's more energy closer towards the low pressure than away from it, think of a hurricane. If you think of a hurricane and how, this is going to be a bad model to draw, but if you think of a hurricane here, typically the weaker winds are on the outside of it. So weak winds right here, weak winds right here. But then as you get closer and closer, they tend to get stronger. So stronger and stronger and stronger all the way until it gets to the eye wall. That's kind of the same thing with low pressure systems as they move on through. So as the winds in the atmosphere, as you get closer towards the low pressure system, the winds in the atmosphere actually get stronger and stronger. And because there's enough moisture that can reach up to those stronger winds, to that stronger wind shear, that's the reason why we say that there could be a tornado threat. And that's the reason why there's a 5% chance for tornadoes in Minnesota, Wisconsin, and Iowa. So, as I said, storms tend to initiate in around the afternoon to the evening hours. So at around 3 o'clock, give or take for Central Standard Time, they'll start to initiate and they'll push on through. And then by 6 o'clock into 7 o'clock, there'll be more of a consolidated line per se, and they'll move out of the area and get out of your hair. So I could very well be streaming this event tonight. The timing is going to be a little rough because I have to leave. I have to leave for my coaching job at around 7:30-ish Central Standard Time. So I'll be leaving right when the tornadic threat devolves into a more gusty wind threat, but still, there is a good chance that I might be able to stream. So make sure you turn on your notification bell if you want to see me live stream and do some very, very exceptional severe weather analysis. Because that's what my channel is more or less built on. These videos is more or less a filler to the filler in between events to try and help you guys out understand what I'm thinking. Let's move over towards Kansas and show you all the hailers. Actually, you know what? Real quickly, I want to do a sounding. Just a sounding in front of these storms. Because I do want to know the conditions here. Okay, so this is the general conditions around, in and around the storms that we could be expecting for the tornadic threat. So let me dissect this real quickly. So you have a nice veering hodograph, especially at the 0 to 1 kilometer height. You do have that nice veering nature, and the 2 to 3 kilometer is actually not messing this up, or 1 to 3 kilometers is not messing it up. It's actually a really good hodograph. So the veering is perfect. This is a tornadic hodograph, and you can see on the possible hazard type, it indicates a TOR, or short for tornado. So the parameters do check out that is a tornadic sounding. The cape, there is decent amounts of cape to be able to consider miniature supercells. So at around 1,300 joules per kilogram is what they're expecting. I mentioned in a couple of videos before to even consider supercells that you would want at least 750 to 2,000 joules per kilogram. And so this is right in that that acceptable range, if you will, for that. And then capping inversion, there isn't a whole lot, so that is the good news. There actually could be some explosive characteristics with that then, if that's the case. Storms could explode and be a bit more robust, which could indicate that you could have larger amounts of hail, especially with a dry layer that has established itself in between 3 and 6 kilometers, which is pretty obvious here that there is one. So we could see some larger hail in some of those areas up in the tornadic risk area. And then lapse rates, they actually aren't half bad. Surface to 3 kilometer is 7, which is 7.7, which, as I said in yesterday's video, if you see lapse rates and they're a 7 or above, they're good enough for hail. That's exactly what we're seeing here, that they're above 7. 3 to 6 kilometers, it's not that big of a deal that it's 6.5, but it's still a pretty good lapse rates overall. And then the K index, which the higher the number, the greater chance for storms to develop, I should say, with more moisture. Usually you want an over 30, so the fact that it's 35 tells me that there is a good chance that storms could develop on that. And as I take a look here, it doesn't seem to be elevated. Helicity is pretty good. Helicity is just the difference of wind speeds at the bottom compared to the top. So the difference of that is put out into numbers as helicity. So usually if you get anything above 200 M2S2, then you typically can consider tornadoes in that instance. So the fact that it's 350 is pretty good too. And then storm relative helicity from the surface to 1 kilometer, or SRH, is above 200 as well, which is really good. So I don't see anything that can really dethrone this event, besides the fact that if storms form, then they have a really good chance of producing tornadoes. So people in those areas, you definitely need to watch this out, or watch out for this. Let's head over to central US, and we'll talk about the hail event in eastern Kansas. And you can see not a whole lot of storms form according to the HRRR. As a matter of fact, storms kind of form at around the 8 o'clock hours in eastern Kansas. They don't really do a whole lot. They're just a bit more of a clump heading into the overnight hours. So around 8 o'clock, if you live in eastern Kansas, western Missouri into parts of Oklahoma. That's where you guys can expect a chance for some scattered storms, and it's not really a whole good chance, but you guys could see some hail in those events. I do want to take a look at the supercell composite real quickly so I can see the best conditions in and around this area. Yeah, look at that. Supercell composite just goes mental up there. Right here. Let's see what this is. Okay, so as I mentioned, capping inversion is pretty insane with this event, especially since anything over 60 or negative 60 joules per kilogram for cap, which is a limiting factor if you're new to what capping inversion is. Anything over 60 is kind of bad. So the fact that it is nearly tripled, that is kind of that's kind of bad. Or at least 2.5, I should say. But lapse rates, they are really good. Surface to 3 kilometer lapse rates is in the 8s. 3 to 6 is 6.7, so it's closer to 7 than 6, which isn't that bad. Hodograph is still nice, but you're not going to really get a tornadic signature. But that hodograph does check out. Helicity is all right. Storm relative helicity at 1 to surface to 1 kilometer is pretty good. So K index is 3.32. So it's around the 30 mark, which isn't really all too great. Which is kind of the reason why storms don't really initiate a whole lot, as well as with the capping inversion. So this general vicinity here, what I'm seeing here, especially with this dry spike here in the 3 to 6 kilometer region, you could see some larger amounts of hail, but the threat for tornadoes and gusty winds, I'll just say the threat for tornadoes seems to be pretty much diminished due to the fact that the storms don't seem to look like, according to the models, that they will initiate. All right, let's take a look at Friday here. And Friday we are actually getting the event here on the NAM, which is pretty good. So I do want to see what the NAM actually says about this, because I'm going to be reacting to this for the first time, like all of you. So supercell composite into Texas. Tornadic sounding. I don't know why the QT is up that high, but that's nice. So dew points in the mid 50s, temperatures in the low 60s. That's not bad. The hodograph is pretty good, actually. It does veer off towards the right like it should, so that's pretty nice. It does seem as if this will have a bit more of a northeasterly component rather than a easterly component that you like to see with some of the some of the right moving thunderstorms or supercells. But it's actually not too bad. Lapse rates, surface to 3 kilometers 7.9, so it's around 8. 3 to 6 kilometers around 6.7, so that's not bad. Cape, in this case, which as I mentioned before, it's just the energy, convective available potential energy. Across the board is around 1,560. It's forecasted to be 1,800, so that's actually not too bad. Helicity lacks a bit to be desired because it's around 200, but it's still there, so that's something to keep in mind. And then K-index, this is the thing that probably will kill it a little bit with no initiation. It's around 18, so it's kind of a little bit of a meh thing there. Let's go into the general conditions here, because I don't think I'll be able to see a whole lot more from this. Go to the... let's go to the NAM. I gotta find the NAM. There's the NAM. And then we gotta go to the south central. There we go. And we got to go to temperature and Fahrenheit. There we are. So on Friday, it seems as if the conditions in general do rise up to about, say, 70 degrees in central Texas, 60 degrees in Oklahoma. But this doesn't seem as if it's a whole lot too interesting, in my opinion. The one for Friday, at least. Mainly because there isn't really any sort of forcing to kind of give those thunderstorms that extra jump. But, and you'll see what I mean And the next day, I hope the name actually goes that far. Yeah, it does. So 18Z, you can see that dry line kind of develop, or that cold front, and how it just pushes through and creates a bit more kick or pep in the step of these thunderstorms. So, and that's the reason why the Storm Prediction Center, if you take a look back at the day 4 outlook, look at how wide this event is. It's from central Texas all the way into Kansas. And you can see, if we go back over here to the NAM, right here in central Texas, this is where these storms start. So that's exactly what we're looking at, and how this cold front can kick off some gusty winds, maybe some amounts of large hail, and the threat for tornadoes. But I do real quickly, I want to go down to the south central U.S. now, and I want to be able to see for myself. Okay, so the energy is still there, but it does seem to be a bit more elevated and or capped. So Friday doesn't seem to be all too good, in my opinion. Yeah, it just seems really elevated and capped. So the photographs are still good, though. Don't get me wrong, but the event in Oklahoma and Texas, I mean, there is a window opportunity, but it does seem to be a little bit elevated. So we'll have to keep in mind that as we move forward. But for that event on Friday, all I can say right now is large hail, gusty winds, and a very small threat for tornadoes. But I wouldn't even consider the tornado threat right now, just by looking at the models here. 18Z, this is more of a gusty wind threat, in my opinion, on Saturday. Mainly because if you have a screaming cold front like that with dew points, that's typically what you'll get. But let's just take a look at the sounding here and be able to dissect it. Photograph, as we always take a look, it curls off to the right, so this checks out. Now it does leave a lot to be desired in the 2 to 3 kilometer region, because it does curl a bit back into the rotation, but it does kind of give a little bit of a curly cue. So that is something to keep in mind as well, that there is spin in the atmosphere. Movement does seem to be, or storm motion does seem to be a bit more to the northeast, so that's something to keep in mind with that. Lapse rates, pretty poor at the surface, the 3 kilometer region. So it's around a 6, and 3 to 6 kilometers, 7.3, which is not bad, but you know, it just doesn't really look all too interesting. Helicity is all right. K index is 30, so that's leaves a little bit to be desired, but it's still something. Helicity is still all right. It's around 200. Shear is not bad. Yeah, I mean, I would say just by looking at the NAM right here that it's a bit more of a gusty wind threat, but we are looking at the end of this model run here on the NAM, and it's at 18Z, which is towards the middle part of the day. So the NAM is probably not the best thing to go off of here, and it probably is just best for us to go off of the GFS. And with that being said, let's take a look and see what the GFS says. Nothing really too much to change my opinion. Nothing really too much to change my opinion. But regardless, you'll get that gusty wind threat, and then you could definitely see the chance for severe weather on Sunday. It doesn't really show it here, but if we go back to the GFS here on Weather Bell, you'll be able to see that there'll be this giant cold front that pushes on through, and that could cause some real gusty winds into portions of Dixie Alley as it continues to move on through, and that's something that people need to continue to monitor with that. So giant bow echo or squall line that pushes on through from Friday into Monday, that could lead to some gusty winds, maybe some bits and bobs of hail, and a couple tornadoes possible. But as of right now, it doesn't really seem all too likely that you'll get that the worst amount of storms on Friday. It'll be more towards a Saturday and Sunday threat. Another thing that I want to take a look at before we go here is dew points. And dew points are pretty high in this. at least not too high. It's around the mid 60s in central Texas, into the low 60s in Oklahoma, which that's around what the dew points should be if you want to consider thunderstorms in general, or at least if you want to consider strong thunderstorms. Um, but it doesn't seem to be all too um, big of an issue, especially with there not being as much moisture as there is. So that's something to keep in mind with all of that. I do real quickly want to take a look in general at the US. And I'm going to do a long range forecast. I didn't actually plan on doing this, but this is just to keep you around for a little bit longer. As I take a look at this, I just want to say thank you all for coming to my video. If you did like it, please be sure to subscribe, leave a like as well, and hit that notification bell so that you never miss out on any of my content, whether it is me posting videos or me doing live streams on severe weather, hurricanes, whatever. So, in my opinion, I do the best severe weather analysis out of everyone. So, and you can take a look at my previous live streams if you really want to. But, yeah, I stream for the longest. I am consistent with my work, and I'll let my work speak for itself if I stream tonight. So, that's something to keep in mind. Alright, so here's that low pressure system that we were talking about before, and how it just kind of screams off. But there's another low pressure that forms and pushes through the Rockies. And this is kind of interesting too, because this pattern could be indicative that we could have a nice little kickstart to severe weather season, especially down in the deep south. So that's something to keep in mind here too, that as more low pressures scream across the central US, more moisture is going to seep up. You'll have that wind shear, and you'll have a good opportunity to see some severe weather into some of the places like this in this box. So that's something to keep in mind, that in the mid part of next week, we could see a low pressure system move on through. So on Tuesday, I'm not sure if I'll be able to stream that. I'll try to, because Tuesday's my last day of work at Whitetail, and I get off at like 5, so that's going to be kind of shaky. But Wednesday I'll be able to possibly stream. Thursday I'll be able to stream if I need to. But yeah, that's pretty nice. And then it looks like more low pressure systems just kind of scream off the south. So that's exactly what we were kind of looking for here, is the more low pressures that scream off and just kind of go through the central part of the US. And that could bring us a nice little pattern for severe weather. So anyway, guys, that's going to be it for me. My name is Nate. I also go by Hockey Boy 8, and I will catch you guys in the next video. Peace.